This is Ross Lowry, Chair of the Finance Committee, and I am going to call our meeting to order at 7:15. And just as a reminder, Ashley is not going to be listening in tonight, but she will be working from our recording, so let's just be extra careful to identify who's making the motions and such, just so that it can help, her with getting more accurate minutes. So before we get into public participation, I would like to ask if we could do a couple of changes to the agenda, just because we have a full plate tonight with going over both budgets. So one thing I want to do is just when we get to, it's not actually a change to the agenda itself so much as when we're getting the elected official and town staff reports, if you folks are comfortable with it, let's just go to look at any items that are outstanding on the revenue or expense side that, really need to be brought out. Whether you got, some additional revenue we didn't expected, some things are tracking better, some things are tracking worse. So it's not going to change that section of it, just, how deeply we go into things, just in respect for the time and giving, the two budgets their due. Folks comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, so I get the sense of that as yes. And then one thing I will entertain a motion for is just to move discussion of the budget calendar up to after approval of minutes, just because we have to approve the date for the public hearing. And if we don't get to that tonight, I want to make sure, and if we don't get to any other discussion on that budget calendar, I'd just like to make sure that we get that covered.
Seconded.
So I heard a motion by Bob Mora, and it is seconded by Chris Connolly. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that was unanimous by those present, and actually just for the sake of Ashley, let me just identify who is present for the Board of Finance. We have in the room Bob Monroe, Amanda Gordon, Bob Mora, Rhea Klein, Ashley Phelan, and myself, Ross Lowry, and online we have Chris Connolly. And for staff present, we have, and other elected officials, we have Jill Collins, Kosal Huynh, Kristen Hecht, Rodney Fournier, and Jim Rupert. So let's go on to public participation. And I am looking online and I do not see anybody raising their hand to speak. Nobody is present in the room from the public. So I will then move on to approval of minutes for our February 15th, 2024 regular meeting. So do we have any comments on those that we want to have incorporated?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the approval of the minutes as presented.
So I have a second by Bob Mora to approve the minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a second by Chris Connolly. And any discussion on the motion? I see people are still reading, so I will give it a minute.
Just a comment, they're not too wordy and they're to the point.
That is true. Any comments for the discussion? Then I will entertain a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Bob, did you?
I did not vote yet.
Okay. Are you going to?
I am going to abstain.
Okay.
Just to be
All right. Just to be sure. So then
But it's not here.
I'm voting aye. So everybody is in aye except for Bob Monroe, who is abstaining. So I don't see any negative votes. So then we can move on to the elected official and town staff reports. And so, Kristen, I'll see how good you are at summarizing all that stuff that's been going on in the school system.
Thank you, Ross. Give me 1 second. Let me.
Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot the public, I'm sorry. Let me back off that, because we forgot the,
Yeah, you moved it
the
up.
budget calendar now that I moved it up. Sorry about that. I'll give you a chance to warm up on that. So budget calendar.
Ross, as we spoke
Yes.
today, I did confirm with Sue Ellen that we are in the town hall for the 30th of April, if we so choose.
So that's the proposed date that we have on the calendar that we had worked out earlier, which is for April 30th
Correct.
for public hearing, 7:15. And that is here in the town hall, correct?
Correct.
As usual, the usual tight schedule.
Do you need a motion to that effect?
Yes, we could.
I move that we have our budget meeting held on April 30th at 7:15 at the Bolton Town Hall.
I'll second. That's Amanda.
So Amanda seconded, Bob Mora made the motion. Any further discussion? Looking around the room, I'm not seeing any. I will entertain a vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. So that is unanimous by all those present. And just any other quick questions about the budget calendar since we have it up, and I just wanted to make sure nothing else before we move on to the reports. All I can say is it's the usual, a lot of stuff to do in a short time. Okay, then I guess now, Kristen, we can move on to you. Sorry for that before.
No worries. Thank you very much. Can I just make a comment about the public hearing? For those people who are going to be online, which one of them is going to have to be me because I have to have back surgery the week before, unfortunately. It was very hard to hear at a previous public meeting, people commenting from the audience for those people that were online. So I wonder if we could get Novus or somebody to get a microphone situation hooked up where it can be passed around, or they have to come close to the owl. I don't know, something, but something's got to be worked out.
So noted.
Thank you. So for our February report, we are 55% expended compared to 56% this time last year. We continue to have an ever rotating door of open positions. We no sooner fill one than we have others that open up. So we continue to try to hire staff. Currently, we are short 3 certified staff members, 3 paraprofessionals. We have a new staff member coming on after April break, so that's good news. That's a certified staff member. But because of that, we continue to actualize savings in salaries and benefits. At the March Board of Ed meeting, the Board of Education committed $300,000 towards the FY25 budget. There may be additional monies that may be able to be added to that after we finish up March, but the board felt that it was important that we start there, and that's a place to start as we begin budget deliberations. We have a projected over expenditure in special ed, which, is ever evolving and ever changing. I know nobody likes to hear that, but that's the truth of the matter. Any questions for me on this?
Can't see it because the picture went right over the phone number. Or if it's Maryland.
Andrew, we can hear you.
No, that's all right, he's muted. Took care of that. So any questions for Kristen before she moves on? Bob, you got a question?
I do. I normally focus on salary, wages, and benefits. And looking at the number here so far through February, it seems, and I haven't been able to do the finite math on it yet, maybe Kristen might have an explanation. Oh, by the way, I'm Bob Monroe, member of the board. Did we go up kind of significantly? I know we had a $30,000 transfer, and that would have come out of salaries and wages, I believe. Were there other transfers of smaller amounts?
So are you looking at transfers? Which area? are you
I was
at
just looking at
specifically?
the salaries and wages and employee benefits overall, page 3 of the report or so. For 2024, okay, page 3.
Oh, in the budget document you're looking at?
Are you looking at the?
Oh, that,
No, I'm looking at the monthly.
oh, that, okay.
This is Caselwyn.
Hi, Casal.
The transfers that you see on there, that's the total transfer year to date that's been coming out of benefits so far.
And how much money is that?
29,973.
I think a lot of that
Okay.
was the trainer, is that right, Casal?
So that's the-
for 1,000. I'd have to dig back.
Casal, I think you said that 29, say, let's call it 30,000.
Correct.
Is the sum total of all transfers from the, it's from the personal benefits. And
Correct.
it showed nothing from salaries and wages, so it all came out of benefits.
Benefits. Correct. There
Okay,
were 3
and that represents the
transfers.
sum total of all transfers for the year so far.
Correct.
These 2 line items. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other further questions? Okay, Kristen, back to you.
So the only other thing that I would like to call to everyone's attention is with regards to excess cost. So, this is one of our favorite topics of discussion. But there was a change made in FY23 per Public Act 23-1, Section 8, subsection D, which excess cost grant reimbursement modified to a 3-tier funding structure. Bolton falls into the middle tier if it were fully funded at an 88% reimbursement for towns who are ranked 59 to 114 by the state. The state then applies the tiered reimbursements for all districts. If the request from all districts exceeds the capped budget amount, then all districts are reduced proportionately by the shortfall. Currently, we are projected to be receiving 70.46% based on the December filing used for the February payment. This reduction is again subject to change based on all the districts filing in March, which will be paid in May. There is legislation in front of the legislature to fully fund this. I'm just going to say that comes up every year for the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. Bobby, wouldn't you say that's about right?
Yeah.
So, I'd like to stay cautiously optimistic, doing a lot of advocacy on that front. So we'll see what happens. But I just want everybody to bear that in mind. And that concludes my report. If anybody has any other questions.
Amanda,
I just
question?
wanted to clarify that would be, if the bill changed, that would be for next year, not this fiscal year.
Correct.
So this is for an impact for next year.
Yeah. I have a question.
It's Bob Mora.
2 things. I know you're waiting for March to get some finals on insurance. Have you gotten those yet, or?
So we did delightfully receive our final number from the state.
You did?
We budgeted 6%. We budgeted 6%, both us and the town. The
Yeah, I
state
saw that.
2% increase. However, we just opened up open enrollment because now we had a number that we could work with. So
Yeah.
now it will be depending upon what happens in open enrollment before we can kind of finalize, do we have any savings? Or quite frankly, are we in the hole? Because people didn't tell us they were going to take family insurance and they decided to do, you know what I mean? So we got to wait for that to play out. I'm hopeful that we have that information early to mid-April.
Okay, thank you. And, yeah, and also, I think you were also waiting for the property insurance as well?
We got that last week,
Oh,
or this week.
you just got it in?
We just got it.
Is it good, bad, or indifferent?
So we budgeted 5% increase
Yeah,
because the letter we had gotten earlier on in the year was that the increase would not exceed 5%.
right.
So we budgeted 5%. We got information this week, I think it was Monday. Workers' comp will not change, it's staying flat.
That's good.
Property and liability insurance will go up 3% instead of 5%. That's not a tremendous savings, it's about $3,000.
No, it's
Right.
still,
But still savings.
But it's still savings.
it's still, yeah, it still isn't going the other direction. Thank you. That was my concern.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else you wanted to go over, Kristen, or is that it?
That covers it for me. Thank you.
Any other questions for Kristen? I'm looking, Bobby, you in the middle of thinking of a question, or you seem
I'm doing
poised?
math in my head, I'm
Okay,
usually fluent. No, I'm fine, thank you.
Then we'll move on to town update for revenue and expenses.
Can everybody hear me well enough from here?
Can folks online hear Jim if he sits back there, or do we need him up here?
No, I hear him fine.
Thanks. So the first part of our report is the tax collection report, and as usual, or per usual, that is doing quite well. I think the numbers are self-explanatory there. You know, we're at, you know, we're over our projected amount for percentage collected. So I think that bodes well for us as we wrap up the year. And then when you look at the revenue statement, Jill, you might need to jump in here just a little bit, but in several categories, we are doing better than we had projected, or better than you had projected with input from staff at the beginning of the year. Your taxes are collected at 100.85%. We still have a shortfall in what our expected revenues were from the state of Connecticut with the education grants. And I think, you know, we have to wait and see how the final numbers come in to see where that stands. We're at 117.33% in other municipal grants for education. So that category is doing quite well. And with other town revenue, although we're still anticipating some revenue coming in, we're at 145.10% of what your projected revenue was for a total expected revenue of 96.59%, which is pretty good at this time of year. So there's still some revenues that we projected to come in that haven't come in yet. And here's a new page that you haven't seen before.
Jim, before we move on?
Yes,
Excuse me,
sir.
Bob Monroe. So normally you accompany that little explanation there with another line, and that is, we don't expect any real deviation from what we budgeted from these amounts, from these other grants at this point, or do we have reason to be concerned?
Well, I think, you know, Kristen just explained to you that there may be some shortfall in the ECS projected funding, right? Beyond that, Jill, is there anything you're aware of?
No, not at all. Everything so far is on target. I do believe Kristen was talking about excess
Excess
cost
cost.
grants. The ECS, the only thing, we should come in where we're supposed to be. The only thing that could reduce that is in the excess cost estimates. If they were too high and we owe the state money, that will reduce that ECS money. But I doubt it would be very much, if anything, because they were pretty low in their excess cost last year. So
Well, with regards to excess cost, we budget at a 70% reimbursement rate because we know that historically we have never been even close to fully funding in the formula. So we are always very conservative in our budgeting.
So the only difference in the adjustment will be actual to estimates, and I don't believe it would be all that much money.
Correct.
Does that satisfy you, Bob?
Yes, thank you.
And
There is a little bit more on the back of that page, by the way,
yeah,
if you hadn't seen that. And then Jill put an interest report in there for you, because that's,
yeah,
of course, a great area of interest for you guys.
so to speak.
Yeah. So I think, you know, those numbers speak for themselves. You know, thank you for pushing the Board of Selectmen and staff to really, you know, go back and look at this and talk with the bank. And, you know, thank you to Jill for being proactive, you know, with spending some time and effort, you know, putting the town's money in places where it's going to generate the greatest interest.
Yeah.
Yes, Bob?
Yeah, Bob Monroe here. Yeah, it's great to see. Through February, we're reporting just shy of $400,000 with receipt of $38,000. I would be interested in hearing, and not going to hold you to it, Jim, your idea, Jill, if you have one, an idea as to what you think this might result in the last 4 months. Now, obviously, it's a declining balance, and it probably results, well, it shouldn't be a declining interest rate, but it should be a declining interest on a declining balance. I've never seen the contract with the bank. I have no idea still how to project this. I'd still make another request for it, mark it confidential, so I can work on these numbers. But what would be your guess? For the last 4 months.
I haven't spent any time guessing it. You know, it really does depend on, you know, what we're able to maintain for a balance.
Right.
Because we only begin to draw interest or generate interest after a certain threshold of balance is met.
For that 7 million.
And I just don't know, you know, Jill probably has a better sense of where we're at with that than I do. And as you report, I mean, you know, the amount of money we have in the bank goes down this time of year until we collect taxes again.
Right.
So, you know, Jill, you want to take a stab at this?
Projecting, absolutely not. I can tell you right now, we're about 14 million, so we're getting interest on 9 million. And we're getting pretty, our collections and tax has really done well, so that will dwindle as we go on, and the expenditures are going to increase. As we all know, there'll be the teachers' balloon checks and the benefits and all of that. So I won't project, because I don't know what the economy's gonna do.
I was talking about benefits or anything else. I was just talking about the line item of interest and what it might mean by the end of the year. I'm looking at this saying that even in February with a diminished balance, we still picked up $38,000. So I'm thinking that in March, even with even a cuts in half, it'd be 20 and a half again in April, we'd still pick up at least another $30,000 there. That's what I'm thinking, and it may be more.
In July had 20, so that's,
Okay, what?
in July had 20, so that's
And that's at one of its lowest point.
Yeah.
Right, that's about at our lowest point.
That's your lowest point.
So you could assume it's probably gonna drop from, say, 38,000, just as a guesstimate, down to something around 21, 20, something in that area, but it's nothing that you can really firmly set it.
No, yeah, it's just a guess. I'm not holding anybody to it. I don't want you to hold me to it, but I'm thinking we could have another $50,000 or $60,000 there.
yeah, I would guess 25, just evenly
Total.
over those last
Total?
4 months, over the last
So
4 months.
so you're looking at about $100,000 overall.
I think so.
400.
It's 100 in total.
Yeah, that's what I was guessing in my head, something.
Yep.
100 total.
If you push me to make a guess, that's what I would guess.
I mean, that would be great. I mean,
I think
You have to remember, we still have one more bond payment, and depending on when the demolition happens on the Notch Road building, that's $1.4 million right there. We have, Casal would know better, but is it about 2 million for balloon checks and benefits for the teachers in that beginning of June? I think it's pretty close to $2 million, but, and I know we're gonna still collect interest in a good amount, and we'll be well over our projection, but, we just gotta keep those things in mind.
Yeah, this is something Jill and I were talking about briefly this afternoon. A lot of this depends on how quickly we just spend down the money that we have in our accounts. And
Absolutely.
it's a good thing if we hurt, if we get some of our projects done faster, but then the flip side of that is the money's gone and we don't get interest.
Yeah, but effectively, we're through March.
This is still doing well.
April and May are, your big drop will probably be June. So
Yeah.
you're gonna be doing good I'm sure we've done well in March. We'll be doing decent in April and May. And who the hell cares in June if you do a quick drop? We have.
You've already made most of the money.
We've made the money.
All right.
So why don't we move, if we could, move on, because it sounds like we'll guesstimate about 100,000, see how it plays out, based on next, March, when we get the March figures in
That'll
April.
be a good time.
Ross, can I just ask a quick question? Because I don't remember, and I should have these conversations seared in my memory about interest. But what was in the budget for interest for this year?
Well, that's on that page.
15,000.
15,000.
Sideways for me, so I'm just asking.
15,000.
Thank you.
Well,
Great news.
So we're a bit over.
A little over, thanks to a little help from our friends in the Federal Reserve.
So the next sheet that you have is the expense sheet, and it really shows that we're on track for spending in all departments with the exception of waste collection, which we still anticipate a shortfall of somewhere around $70,000 to $80,000, and we are looking for money to move into that account. So we'll be coming to both boards here probably in the very near future, looking to move some significant monies into that account. But other than that, we are really on track for spending as the end of the fiscal year approaches.
Any questions for Jim Rupert? Looking around the room, I don't see any
Then you have a list of our February transfers.
transfers. Yep. Quick question, just unexpected repairs, which in particular, if you can,
Let me see which one.
it's not a large sum of money, it's like $5,000.
was it the police, the house, Jim, was it a furnace?
Oh, this one, they had to put a new boiler in at the state trooper's office.
Okay, it's kind of a you have to do it.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Jim Roper? Seeing none, I guess we can now move on to new business and presentation and discussion of Board of Education's budget. Did you want to present, Joe, or, I'm sorry, Kristen?
Yes, please, if that's okay.
Yeah.
1 second, let me share my screen. All right, can everybody see it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So this evening, it's my honor to present to you the Board of Education's 24-25 recommended budget. Just want to remind everyone that we are guided by our portrait of a graduate, and the mission of the Bolton Public Schools is to inspire all students to grow as learners, individuals, and citizens. We believe that all students in the Bolton Public Schools are empowered to embrace learning and a healthy mindset, continually build knowledge, develop skills, and become engaged global citizens. In terms of the expenditure plan for FY25, it is a proposed increase of 3.52%. And you can see there in the pie graph that the majority of the spending is for salaries and benefits of the employees that we have, with 2% for regular instruction, 4% for student support services, 4% for administration, and 7% for operations and services. Here is another way of looking at the distribution of the FY25 increase, and it really is driven by salaries and benefits. We have a small increase in special education, in administration and business, a decrease in regular instruction, and an increase in operations and services. With regards to these budget drivers, 81.39% of the budget increase is driven by our contractual obligations. 9.26% is driven by special education, and the remaining costs are just maintenance of operations. Our building needs, instructional needs, repairs and maintenance, transportation, technology, and school insurance. In terms of budget reductions that have occurred, round one began with zero-based budgeting. The teachers submitted their budgets to the teacher leaders. Teacher leaders then met with building level and central office administrators minus me to go over the requests. And what was presented to me was a 4.97% budget increase. That budget added back world language in grades 5 and 6, which you may remember we lost a few years back. It also maintained athletic trainer funding, as well as met all requests for instructional materials, technology, operations, and maintenance. Round two was cuts made in meetings with myself and the administrative team. It included reductions in instructional materials, the removal of the BCS grades 5 and 6 world language position, and the removal of the athletic trainer funding. I just want to speak to that a little bit if I could. Prior to this year, we have had an athletic trainer through integrated rehabilitation services for the last several years, many years, and the cost of that was $21,000. There was some changes made in college programs for athletic training that went into effect a couple of years ago. And as a result, there was a very, very limited number of students graduating with an athletic training degree this past year. And they were not able to find staff to fill the positions for a number of high schools in the area, and we were one of them. So we had hoped to hang on to that in the hopes that they're going to find someone. In the end, the decision was made to cut that. And if in fact they can find one to hire and Bolton is able to get one, we have budgeted for that in choice for next year and then maybe try to get it back into the operating budget for the year after. So I just wanted to put that out there, but that is contingent upon finding an individual. In terms of inflation, since FY14, Board of Ed budgets have not kept up with the rate of inflation. $1 in July of 2013 would purchase $1.31 in goods and services today. Inflation increased from FY14 to FY24, July of both those years, increased 31%. Board of Ed budgets increased 22.55%. The proposed FY budget keeps spending close to the recent rate of inflation. If we had kept up with inflation, we would be looking at a $17.2 million, approximately $1.1 million more than our actual FY24 budget. And our proposal would be approximately $667,000 more than the actual proposed amount of this requested budget. And then there's some additional consumer price index inflation calculator information for you, which is similar to what I just shared above. I thought it was important, and I don't know that I've done this in the past, but to share with you area Board of Education budget requests for FY25. You can see there that there's only one other community in that entire list that is less than the Bolton Board of Education's budget request, with the average in our area being 5.05%. In terms of projected revenues, we are looking at $212,900 in federal grants, $488,000 in state grants, for total projected grant awards of $700,900. I just want to remind everybody that choice monies, part of state grants, are used to pay tuition for Bolton students who attend state magnet and agricultural schools. We are projecting this to be $166,729. There is also discussion at the legislature about increasing the cost to go to magnet schools to districts. So we're going to have to wait to see what happens with that as well. So this number could definitely change. Not to our benefit.
Excuse me, Kristen, Bob Monroe's got a question.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Chris, sorry to interrupt, Kristen. About how many kids does that represent? The,
Casal, do you have that
66,000.
information at hand? Casal?
Okay. All right.
I have to get back to you on that.
Yeah. She'll see if we can find that information. I'm just going to keep going if that's okay.
That's absolutely all right, just curious.
Yeah, thanks. In terms of our capital projects, this is kind of where we landed and where I believe the Board of Selectmen landed with a set aside for 5 years for both the BCS and the BHS HVAC assessments that have to occur every 5 years. $108,125 for the BHS ADA transition pads. For those of you that have been to the high school before, you know that we have those salmon colored transition pads. The cement below them is corroded. So we need a different system and all of that needs to be pulled up and redone. We want to make sure we keep our ADA compliance, and then a district pickup truck with plow for $80,000 for a total of $204,125. I keep this here just as a reminder of potential referendum items going forward, which would be the BCS roof replacement, the original air handlers and air conditioning units that are currently on the roof, potential of discussion for air conditioning for classrooms. It's only getting warmer. It is not getting cooler. A redo of the soccer field at the high school and a science lab upgrade at Bolton Center School and a library remodel at Bolton Center School. Our enrollment, we're anticipating an elementary decline due to the fact that the state put forth new legislation that goes into effect this July 1st for the upcoming school year for kindergarten age children. You can no longer enter kindergarten. You have to be 5 by September 1st now. Previously, this year, you could turn 5 by January 1st. We have to have an assessment process in place to assess any parent who thinks that their child is in good shape to start kindergarten prior to being 5. Now there is discussion at the legislature that maybe they're going to put that off a year. So this may all change before it's all said and done, but we don't know. So this is our best guess. Columbia enrollment, you see there, we are projecting 18 students again for next year. And you can see their numbers, they go up, they go down a little bit. With a projected total of $256,154. I just want to call to everyone's attention the accomplishments for 23-24, which continue to be quality learning experiences to address the needs of the whole child. The implementation of managed technology infrastructure support and cybersecurity services with Novus, and the advancement of the BPS technology plan. We focused on embedded PD on trauma-informed practices and teacher clarity to support students' emotional health and the development of high-quality success criteria for all our students. The expansion at Bolton High School of computer science equipment, including the TI Innovator Rovers, which are programmable robots, and calculators for handheld programming. A math coach to support the improvement of teachers' instructional practices and student achievement in math at the elementary level. And this is really a direct response to elementary students' struggles with math as we came out of the pandemic. And, we continue to try to shore them up. Implemented a comprehensive communication system called Parent Square for staff, parents, and students, including text, email, app, and voice messaging. ongoing expansion of BHS, UConn, and ECU, ECSU, ECE dual enrollment and AP courses for our students to earn college credit before leaving Bolton High School, and a BCS pilot of CSDE approved K-5 reading program. Our students continue to be actively involved and engaged. In grade 11, we had 54% of our students in one or more AP classes and 15% in one or more UConn, ECSU, ECE classes. And in grade 12, 53% in AP and 51% in UConn, ECSU, ECE classes. We had 334 college applications generated. We offer a host of clubs. Many students are involved in clubs and activities. We've got 1/3 of the student body at both schools participating in athletics. We've got kids giving back, whether it's through Pajama Day for kids to support kids with cancer, food drives, the Veterans Day Assembly. If you haven't ever attended it, I would encourage you all to attend next year. I think it's one of the most moving days of the school year, if not the most moving day of the school year. We had our second annual Winter Family Night, holiday meals and gifts drive, senior partnership with the senior BHS partnership with our senior center, Red Cross blood drives, and over 640 hours of community service completed by Bolton High School students. I share the next couple of slides with you as a reminder why we do what we do in the Bolton Public Schools. We're very proud of the work that our teachers and our students do, and they're making great gains and doing great things. And our tagline is empower, build, develop, become. And I think these pictures represent exactly that. Shout out to our girls basketball team who went far in the state tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
With a very short bench. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So they went to the semifinals, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And then finally, the Board of Education's budget request supports the BPS strategic plan priorities, which include maintaining Bolton Public Schools as a high-performing school district. They focus on student success, a caring culture, talent development, resource stewardship. And again, our tagline, empower, build, develop, become. And I leave you with this thought: education breeds confidence, confidence breeds hope, and hope breeds peace, by Confucius. And that ends my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, on behalf of the Board of Ed.
One question, please.
A question from Bob Monroe to Kristen Heck.
Yeah, Kristen, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Ashley was talking.
She was. She thanked you on behalf of the Board of Ed.
I was just about to say, Kristen, to you, Casal, and team, thank you for a very robust, very transparent budget, made for a very easy review, but at the same time, we had great discussions with the Board of Ed, so I'd say that the big items that really move the needle are salaries and wages. Not a whole lot you can do there. But at the same time, we also focused on a small step too, kick the tires there. So I thought we had a really good, robust discussion with the board. So thank you for that. And I'm happy to answer any questions people have.
All right, thank you. Bob, your question?
I didn't want to stop your momentum there, but you were talking about different innovations. One of them was about a math robot or something like that. How is that working?
So we use it in the tech ed classes and the math classroom, where kids are doing programming and, things that are making them ready for like a real world career. It's great.
Cool. So kids are interacting with the robot.
Yeah, and programming it.
Yeah, that's good.
Very innovative.
And they have competitions, so did they go have any competitions with other school districts? I think they do.
Yes.
In the robotics, yes, we do.
Yeah.
So we use the robots there, but we also have this robot that we also use in the classrooms as well, that's set apart from robotics. In fact, we have a middle school team going to Worlds robotics. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Question from Bob Mora.
I thought I heard that there's gonna be sounds like a greater input or emphasis in math in the elementary level. Is that what that material was
Yes.
for? That
So we did that this year because we had, I think there was some, I think parents held their kids back because there was the new law that went into effect. I think some parents thought that that law about when kindergarten could start was for this past year. So we had a smaller than normal kindergarten class. So we held on to that position because we didn't know till the very end that that was the place that we were in till the end of August, and created this math instructional coach position because we had kids that we had different, deficits in math because they were sitting behind a screen in COVID, right? So we're trying to shore them up because if you don't shore them up when they're little, it gets that much harder all the way through.
No, I was heartened to see that as a former math teacher, and felt that that's one item that's left behind way too often.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
And a question from Amanda.
I just had a non-material question just for clarity's sake. So page 45, the program systems management budget. In the program description, we're not using CREC anymore, right? We're purely moved over to Novus for our technology provider, right?
Yes, I'm just trying to get there. Sorry.
Yeah, so I just think we just need to replace CREC with Novus in that description, that's all.
Amanda, help me. Where on page 45 is that?
Page 45, under the program description, line 2.
It says the
Got it.
district's
Yep,
technology.
got it.
provider.
Thank you. Sorry, we missed that. Yes.
No, no worries. I mean, there's a lot of things to change, so I'm the crazy person that pays attention to detail.
Nope, I appreciate it. And I read this thing 90 million times, so sometimes maybe I just think I see it and I don't.
I did also, in the part that we didn't really go over on page 57 about the Columbia students, I just wanted to, so it's my understanding, I think, based on what you wrote about the excess cost grant, that our average cost per pupil is just over 20K. Is that accurate?
I believe that that's accurate, but the rate that you see for the tuition rate for Columbia is based on an index that is documented in the 10-year agreement that we have with them.
Correct, yeah, and I read that, and I first was like, what? And then I kept reading and I saw that, but I just wanted to highlight that we're losing $6,000 a year per student there.
Correct.
Is that an accurate assessment? Okay.
Well, I mean, yes and no, I guess.
They bring other value, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, some of it's fixed costs too.
Correct.
But yeah. Actually, a lot of it's fixed costs that we would have regardless of whether they were coming or not. So.
Right,
Correct.
right.
We're
That
still
makes sense.
turning the lights on whether they're here or not.
Right, yep, that makes sense.
So if they're not here, then.
So I will take as
we'll-
many Columbia students that want to come.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah,
Well,
oh, no, they add in other ways
It's
besides.
part of
students.
marketing.
yeah.
How far below capacity are we? Like, how many more students could we take before those,
In the high school or
in the high school?
156?
I think a lot.
Yeah, 130, 140 kids.
Right.
All right.
Are the choice students in this, can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Are the,
Question from Rodney Forney.
where does the choice students come in to the population? Are they shown anywhere on here?
They are in the student count, Rodney, because we have the kids that we have now, the seniors that are graduating this year, they are not in the count, but the 8th graders we have now are in the count for the student count for the high school.
Okay, and the money that they bring in is located somewhere in here?
That's
Or is-
part of the choice grant, and so that
Okay.
would be under the $488,000.
Got it. Right
Part of
there.
that.
But back to your question about Columbia, that's definitely, I think, a focus item for us. I would really like to see that
I'm sorry,
enrollment.
Ashley, what's the comment?
I'd just like to see the Columbia enrollment increase, and it's very difficult to do, but it should definitely be a goal of ours.
They're having decreases in their population as well.
Everyone has their own problems, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, I think that is important to note, right, is there has been a swing since the pandemic of 8th graders selecting trade high schools in larger numbers than we have seen in probably 15 years. And I think a lot of that was driven by what was happening in the economy, how you can learn HVAC in high school and come out and have a job making more than a classroom teacher who has a master's degree.
Yep.
That's a good
Amen.
observation, yeah.
Well, good jobs in the trades.
Well, you go back in our era, that was part of the regular curriculum in high schools. They had virtually 4 to 5 shops in the school system, obviously.
Wooden medals and
The whole thing.
everything.
It's a different era, but again, it's a changing era. And education, one thing about it, and nothing's, if it's stagnant, you're dead. But I mean, it's evolving, and that's something that I think is going to be an interesting factor in how our education moves forward.
Yeah, we spent some time at the last board meeting, which was very insightful to me about how difficult it is, not only for us, but all school systems in Connecticut to find and retain teachers.
Yeah.
Not only teachers, but our schools were not built with the facilities to accommodate that too. I mean, it's a dual issue. It's not an easy one. Well, that's something for the future. We got our own issues to deal with, so
Yeah.
I'll keep quiet.
Yeah, good discussion. Question, Amanda?
This is just me being ignorant about how education is funded, but when our 8th grade students opt to go to technical schools, do we pay for that?
Yeah, so if they opt for an agricultural school or
Oh, it's part of that, okay,
it comes out of the choice grant
got
and
it.
we pay for it, yep. And we provide transportation
Yep.
for the technical high school.
Do you have to provide special needs if there are any?
Question was from Rodney.
Yeah, if there are students with special needs, we also have to support their special education needs if they are at a magnet school, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, some of these costs follow wherever the student goes.
This is Casal.
Yes, Casal.
We have 26 students to Bob's question.
Oh, thank you.
And that's pre-K-12.
That is K-12.
I'm sorry, K-12.
That's for the whole system.
Currently, we still do not have to pay for pre-K, but who knows with that?
So, Casal, if I might, and I thank you for looking that up. Is there a number just for the high school?
Their number just, hold on. For the high school, there is, I would have to dig more into that because I budget based on our current number of students. So I'd have to go back and dig into it because I have them in a lump number.
Okay, well, don't worry about it at this time, thank you.
Okay.
Russ?
Yes,
So
question from Rodney?
if there's 26 kids,
Yeah,
and that was $166,000, it's only $6,000 a kid to send them away? Does that sound?
That's about the average. They're all slightly different cost.
Correct. Like if somebody goes to a Learn school, it's it's one amount. If you go to a correct magnet school, it's a different amount. If you go to an agricultural school, so that's a good average, Rodney, for right now. But that, like I said, that could potentially go up based on some legislation that is out there.
Okay, yep. Just sounded like a good deal.
yeah.
I will just say that the.
I don't know that the magnet schools think that way because they think they're not getting enough money.
Yeah, well, they got built for free.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Money to build anything.
Not seeing any, then I guess we can now move on to the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you, Sal.
Yes.
Do you have anything you want me to put up on the screen, Jim, or?
No, we'll just talk about the budget.
Okay, because most of this is lots of charts and numbers and a little bit hard to put up on the screen and digest.
Yeah, I'm gonna generally work off of this corrected sheet that
Yeah,
was provided for you this afternoon, and then if you have specific questions about specific budgets as we get into it, we'll turn to those budget sheets. So once again, the Board of Selectmen directed all of the town departments to come forward with as near a 0% increase as possible, with utilizing zero-based budgeting. And if you just take a glance at this list, you'll see that, some of our budgets came in, lower than they were last year, but there are increases that amount to a significant dollar value, but most of those increases come in just a very few budgets. And I'd like to, highlight on those, and then certainly we can get into the weeds on any particular budget that you'd like to. The budget number one is the administration budget, and we are looking at an increase of $54,000. I know some of you have some time on this board, and you'll remember that the administration budget is a budget that we've come to you and cut the last two budget cycles. Unfortunately, this budget cycle, we're not able to do that. It's for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons, it goes back to all of the work that we've done to separate domains with the school and become more secure in our cyber. As we've moved into our own domain, we've moved away from educational licensing from Microsoft. And that comes at a very significantly increased cost for the town. So we have about 50 users that we are paying the full business price of for Microsoft Office programming on their computers. So that is a huge piece of it. There's also an increase in the cost of our IT services with some additional on-site service that we found we needed above and beyond the contract that we have this year. So that is one area of increase, and that explains most of the increase in that professional and technical line item. The other area of increase is with all of the grant projects and all of the drainage projects that we have going on, we are very tight with our budget this year with regard to engineering services in particular. We will probably be transferring money into that account, overexpending what we had budgeted for this year. And with the Heritage Farm Trail, the field upgrades at Herrick Park, the community septic system project that is slated to happen, we anticipate that, it's also going to be tight. So we've increased the budget in that area as well for next year. The next area that you see a somewhat significant increase is in the finance department. It took some convincing on my part with the Board of Selectmen, but we are trying to fund a part-time position for the finance department. It is a department with a staff of 3 that are up against constant deadlines. They manage every single grant dollar that comes through the books. They have to deal with ACH payments. They have to deal with ACH receipts. Every credit card transaction they have to look at and vet. It's a tough job, and they're constantly against deadlines. And I believe that they're understaffed. We believe that by providing them some assistance for at least a year, we can bring some efficiencies into the department. And the Board of Selectmen has said, we're not going to fund this as a permanent position. We'll fund this as a 1-year position. And if you want it beyond this year, you've got to justify it to us. So that's where that 766. That is that position, plus normal wage increases for the department staff. The assessor's office sees an increase of about $3,700. That's for normal wage increases and some additional training. And, it's great that you see in the next couple of line items, we've got some reductions in budget, increase a bit in the town clerk's office with regard to normal operating expenses and staff salaries. The next line item that sees a significant increase is insurance, and we can reduce that a little bit based on the conversation we had earlier with the insurances coming in at 3% instead of 5%. And the other thing that we think we may have done that we've got to look at is that we may have put the entire cyber insurance into this number, which is for the balance of this fiscal year and all of next fiscal year. So we may be able to reduce that number by a little bit more. What we're trying to do is get the cyber insurance on the same cycle as our regular insurance renewals. You'll be happy to know that with all the work we've done with Novus, our cyber insurance renewal came in at a slightly lower cost than last year. It also goes back to one of the things that we're trying to accomplish in the administration budget for next year, and I think the school may actually be working on this already, which is to actually have a cyber plan so that if we find ourselves the victim of a cyber attack, we have a plan in place. That will further get us in compliance with the expectations that our cyber insurance company has for us. So those are all good things that are happening. So that's a number that we should look at and can potentially reduce a little bit. The next significant increase you see is in the elections budget. And there was a lot of conversation around the elections budget. The registrars of voters office came to the Board of Selectmen with a well-thought-out plan. They have looked at really every contingency, and they've looked at what their staffing needs are in order to run all of the election requirements for the upcoming year. Unfortunately, that comes at a significant cost. And to their defense, there are some unknowns. We haven't lived this yet before, right? This is the first time that we're doing early voting. This is, we have, presidential election this upcoming year. We have to run 2 polling places based on the districts. So they really put together a spreadsheet of every cost that they thought they were going to incur, and they came and brought it before the Board of Selectmen and gave a tremendous presentation. Unfortunately, it's a number that we don't like, none of us like.
It's mandates.
Right, it's mandates, and we don't have, any
Unfunded
history,
mandates.
right? And once we have the history, it'll be easier for them to give us a better number.
I think particularly with the early voting, that's the major change to everything. I mean, we're stuck with the 2 districts until the next census, and then who knows what happens.
Right. And this number probably will go down next year because, the following fiscal year, because we won't have a presidential election.
Yeah, it will go down.
Right.
This is like once every
It's like a perfect storm.
Once every 4 years, you get this many elections. And on top of that, this time around, we got hit with the early voting.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a big change, but I think they've done a yeoman's job of planning and preparing us so that, we don't have a budget shortfall in this area.
The registrars across the state have been lobbying their legislators, and they're already aware that this is a bigger hardship for the small towns because they tried to do a one-size-fits-all, meaning they were thinking of the larger cities. Mm-hmm. And so there is a lot of attention on this, and I wouldn't expect us to get any relief, in the coming fiscal year, because the legislature's going to have to meet, have their discussions, and see what comes of it. But apparently that enough of them have heard things that, heard from their constituents that this is an increased expense, doesn't work with small towns. Even some of the larger cities are struggling with doing it. So There's one of those more to come, but there's nothing that we can see that'll really help in the coming fiscal
Well,
year.
and I suspect every group of registrars is gonna have a hard time finding enough staff to do all of this.
Yes, we got lucky this time.
But they gave you $10,000.
They did, yes.
Which benefits us more than, say, Bridgeport or some larger cities.
Yeah, that's true. But it more than doubles the ROV budget, which is unfortunate.
Yeah,
But there's not a lot we can do about it.
because most of this is labor, to your
Right,
point.
most of it's labor. The good news is police protection is down $10,000, and that's based on, that is based on the state picking up more of the cost of the benefits for the troopers. So we have a budget that should cover our police services for next year and give us about $10,000 for overtime if it's needed. So the next significant increase is with the fire commission's budget. The fire department, fire commission came to the board of selectmen and they said, look, we're at a point where we're gonna have to think about adding paid personnel. We can give you a couple of options. We would like to, first of all, work on, retaining and recruiting, current volunteer status. But eventually, paid firefighters is a program that is probably coming to Bolton before too long. So the Board of Selectmen worked out with the Fire Commission and the Fire Department to enhance some benefits for the volunteers, which provides some minor amounts of money for those who meet certain training requirements and respond to a minimal number of calls. In addition to that, there is a small pension program for the firefighters who have provided a number of years of service to Bolton, and a small increase in some of our or most of our officers get small stipends. The biggest increase is for the fire chief. Fire chief has not taken a wage increase in a number of years in lieu of giving that wage increase to others that rank lower than him. And so this year, the chief is going to see a fairly substantial pay increase. And that was a topic of great discussion. It didn't come easily, but the Board of Selectmen were convinced by the Fire Commission that it was time to make that change.
He also dropped one staff, didn't he?
That's right. In the negotiations, they were willing to give up one paid staff person, which was a lieutenant, I believe.
Yeah.
So as part of that, embedded in the capital budget is some money for the Board of Selectmen along with the Fire Commission to look at a long-range plan for the fire department. And what we hope to gain from that is get an idea of what we need for equipment, what we need for personnel, and what we need for a facility in the long term. We really want to do some long-range planning and figure all of this out, and that doesn't come without putting together a long-range plan. And that will now allow us all to better anticipate the needs for the future and be able to budget for that. And the hope is that if we have to go to paid fire department personnel, when we make that move, they will be able to apply for a SAFER grant, which pays for fire department personnel, I believe, over a 4-year period of time. And I think it starts at like 80% of the cost, and then it reduced to 60%, and then 40%, and probably the last year is 10 or 20%. And the following year, the residents of the town of Bolton would have to pick up that full cost. But, the conversation that took place between the Board of Selectmen and the Fire Commission was very robust with this. And, the fire department agreed to, work with the Board of Selectmen to put this master plan in place so that we could put together a well thought out plan for a couple of reasons. We want to be able to plan for and prepare for it appropriately for financial reasons, also for infrastructure and planning purposes. But the other thing is, if you implement this without a good plan, the last thing that we want to do is alienate the volunteers that have so much given up of their time to serve the needs of the town of Bolton for so many years. And if you don't integrate paid personnel or volunteer personnel in a thoughtful and appropriate manner, you risk creating more problems than you solve. And we want to avoid that totally, completely.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Question from Bob Monroe.
I think you maybe just answered my question in the last couple sentences, but I was gonna say, we're not talking about transitioning to a total commitment to fight fires 24/7. We would
Correct.
still be looking to have a volunteer firefighting force that would be, along the lines that we've had for
So
forever.
volunteers would still be the core
Okay,
part
that's what I thought.
of our mission
Right.
and support. But, one of the reasons I'm not an active firefighter anymore is that the training requirements for a volunteer fire department are not any different from those of a career professional. The amount of time that you have to give is tremendous just to meet the minimum requirements. Back in the olden days, you could just join and learn and go out there and fight fires. And rightfully so, you can't do that anymore, right? But the training requirements in order to keep up those training requirements is tremendous. And the number of calls that we run is somewhere, and don't quote me, it's not an exact number, somewhere around 550 calls a year. Most of those are medical calls. And so not only do we need firefighters, we need emergency medical technicians that provide that quick on-site service while we're waiting for the ambulance to come from Manchester or wherever the ambulance happens to be. So, if you look at the average number of calls that are run, it's about 1.5 calls a day, which, can take a lot out of a volunteer staff, especially when you have a core of, 14 to 20 people that are, responding to the lion's share of the calls. That's a lot of time. It's a big time commitment. And so, I know that's a long answer to your question, but the core of our staff would still be volunteers, augmented by paid firefighter EMTs who pick up the slack times where we typically struggle to have people available to make the call.
Sounds like a thoughtful approach.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm familiar with staffing for 24/7 operations, and I know the problems that financial commitment that takes.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that we didn't move in that direction yet, right?
Right.
We were presented with two options as the Board of Selectmen, option one and option two. Option two had 2 paid staff. Option one is what Jim just described to you. And so the Board of Selectmen said, before we move to option two, we want to engage in that strategic plan to do it in a meaningful way, to make sure that's what we need, explore the options and do it the right way.
We thought that if we go into this with a preconceived notion that we need to have paid firefighters, all we're really doing is mapping a route from point A to point B. But with a strategic plan and an open mind, the hope is that, we can look at every available option, not just, well, let's make a plan to have paid firefighters, right? So we really want to look at what the need is and what the anticipated need for the foreseeable future is. Because, we don't want to just plan for tomorrow, we want to plan for the next, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years.
And if I may, vast majority of fire departments in the state of Connecticut are a blend of volunteer and paid, even in the larger communities, like even South Windsor, a town that big. So that's what you're looking at, scale down obviously to a town like this.
And it's
Summers.
Bob Monroe speaking, just for.
So Bob Moore speaking, I'm
Bob Moore,
sorry.
I'm sorry. It's one of the Bobs.
I gotta remember. Okay.
And,
Yes, sir.
Well, I was just gonna say one other
Ashley?
comment. As we head into kind of the next audit cycle, it's great seeing the collaboration with the fire department, the master plan, but we still continue to have a material weakness in our audit report that I'd really like to resolve. So anything we can do there, Board of Selectmen, to increase the transparency would be great.
So of course, the problem is the
Rodney,
volunteers.
you're.
Rodney, the volunteers are getting more difficult to rely on and to find. They're very reliable, but during the day, they're not always available. And they're just volunteers everywhere, getting harder to find.
Yeah.
Did I say that wrong?
No, I understood it. I think if people didn't understand, they would ask questions. I think you did fine. This group isn't bashful about asking questions.
No.
Okay.
And so the next area, I think, we'll talk about quickly is the highway department. And I want to tell you that, they actually came to us with a 0% increase as requested. And we talked about the need to have some additional drivers with Class A CDL ability. And so the Board of Selectmen, based on that conversation, added this funding in here, which provides the opportunity for two additional staff members to receive, a few weeks of training and get their Class A CDLs, which we think is pretty important in order to, to make sure that we have enough staff available with that ability. Senior and social services has an increase of about, 5.25%. And that's mostly due to wages, making up for wage disparities. We have, we have drivers and personnel that are working at our senior center that are just not paid commensurate with their peers in other towns. The Board of Selectmen recently voted to give them a pay increase for this year, and that's reflected in the wages for next year, as well as an additional increase proposed for next year. It's just so that we can be competitive. We continue to struggle to get enough drivers, especially for van drivers are a lot easier to come by than the drivers for the small bus with the CDL, but we do struggle with that. And so we're just trying to remain competitive.
Is there something with the medical?
Right, and the other thing is, we're paying fairly low wages, and then, we were not paying for their CDL physicals, which, it costs, I guess, around $300 a person per year. So we've decided that, these are very part-time employees. They're not making a significant wage, so we thought one of the other things that we could do to provide a benefit to them, again, to remain competitive, is to pay for those physicals. But the elephant in the room, of course, is refuse services at a $130,000 increase. And I can tell you that we worked very hard over a period of a year to put long-term contracts in place for trash. And as much as you think trash is easy to understand, it's not. It's pretty complicated because there's really three or four pieces to it, right? So there's the guy who comes to your house every week and picks up your trash. And from there, he takes that trash to what used to be Willimantic Waste Paper, which is now owned by Casella. So there's a fee that we pay All American Waste for Ilio to run around town and pick up everybody's trash and wave to everybody as he goes by, right? We hear great things about him.
That's a nice guy.
And then he takes that truck when it's full and drives down to Willimantic Waste Paper, which, by the way, is geographic closest place to take our trash. So we're paying less in fees for trucking. And then he gets on a scale and we pay based on the weight of that trash to get rid of the trash, and that check goes to Casella, which is formerly Willie Waste. And then, there's the recycling, which also gets weighed, and we might get some money back on that depending on the price of the commodities, but the price of the commodities has been pretty low this year. So unfortunately, the amount of money that we're getting back based on the amount of recyclables is pretty low. But then the other piece of that is the transfer station, right? We have cans down at the transfer station that everybody gets to go and dump their bulky waste and other items in. at, certain times of the year after they get their card. And then there's a different division of All American Waste that we have to pay to truck that. And then, of course, we pay for the disposal of that at Willie Waste again by the ton. And we were very fortunate for the last several years. We had a contract that was negotiated and we were paying below market rates for the municipal solid waste disposal per ton. We still have very good rates. They're very competitive rates. And I can tell you that based on the quarterly reporting that we do, town of Bolton residents are doing pretty well. We are actually slightly decreased in the amount of trash we're throwing, I mean, very slightly, but we're slightly decreased on the amount of trash that we're throwing away.
Tonnage.
And the tonnage, yeah. It's just the cost of doing business. And, if you take a look at the number for trash disposal, it's a staggering number. But if we took that same number and we looked at it with every household, there's a little over 2,000 households in town. If all of the 2,000 households did a contract with All American Waste on their own, it would be about double what we pay as a municipality for trash disposal. So it's a staggering number. It has a huge impact on our budget. It's the single number that has the greatest impact on our budget. But I think it's one of the services that we provide that people also appreciate most.
Right, it's $300 a household or so. Once you boil it down.
And so you might ask, well, what can we do, right? How can we continue to do, how can we do better, right? So I think the only thing that we can do to do better is to work on figuring out how to put together a composting program and reduce the amount of tonnage that we put into our waste stream. Because right now, we don't have a separate waste stream for organic waste. And there are some members of our community that already compost, but not everybody. And I can tell you that one of the things that because we're not the only community that's faced with this. With the closure of Mira in Hartford, all of the communities around us are faced with this. The Capital Region Council of Governments represents 38 communities, and of those 38 communities, about 15 of them belong to the Central Connecticut Solid Waste Authority. And if you look in your ordinance book, we're a member of that organization. And that is the one thing that we are going to be working very hard on over the course of this next year, is to look at removing organics from the waste stream as much as possible. And that's the one thing that we can do to probably reduce this cost in the future.
Besides stop using Amazon and the cardboard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maria, question?
Is that is the waste, not the recycling, but is the waste weighed? Is that how it?
So simply by, by finding a different stream for organic waste, whether you do backyard composting or whether we figure out how to provide a service to do curbside pickup for organics or something like that, you simply reduce the cost overall by removing the tonnage from your waste stream. But currently we have no idea what percentage of our waste is organic waste.
Oh, we don't.
We don't, because it's not separated in any way, right? You have single stream recycling, but then everything else goes into one bag.
Yep.
Right.
Well, I'll speak for myself I compost stuff and, make sure, I even compost my shredded office paper. So that doesn't account for, the biggest thing is I'm surprised how quickly that blue bin fills up with recyclables, because you're stuck with packaging you have no control over. Mm-hmm. And that is really the huge thing, because other than that, I have one little plastic shopping bag every week maybe, or every two, so I very rarely go and put the garbage out. I'm just speaking for me. It's really, I think, I agree with you, we need to get stuff composted, that will help. And a lot of this other stuff, we're kind of stuck with how manufacturers choose to package and ship stuff, unless we have some control over, what we pick and how we what we buy, but again, it's a challenge.
And the state legislature is looking at enacting laws to change packaging, to make packaging, minimalistic, so that we reduce the waste in that waste stream. Because some of it's easily recycled, some of it's not.
Yeah.
Amanda, did you still have a question?
Wasn't really a question, I think that like there's some local farms that are doing some innovative stuff. If I recall, I believe the Paracchio farm in Coventry is doing something with composting, and we have a lot of farms here, and I think, if we partner with them to do something, like, we could probably make a large impact in the community. And then I will say the other thing that we talked about is people who have second cans. So apparently people can purchase a second can for $300 a year. Is that
I don't remember what the number
I think
is,
you
but
said
they can
300.
purchase a second.
Yeah, but it's like a one-time fee and they get that whole second bucket. So there's an area where we could potentially charge households more for that second bucket if they wanted a second garbage container, because then they're just adding extra tonnage to what the town is disposing.
It's a lofty goal. It's hard to implement,
Yeah.
but, could we do something with the schools and the science programs? And, it would take many, many years probably to build something.
Yeah, this doesn't happen overnight.
No.
But I think it's a good project,
Yeah.
definitely.
Composting's difficult because it attracts animals too. So
The what?
it attracts animals.
There's at the school.
I raised that. Who's in charge of our conservation commission?
Rod,
Rod Carlin.
Thank you. I brought that up to him and he said, no, that's misinformed. If you do composting correctly, it does not draw animals. So I got my hand slapped for that one.
One of the first things, again, I did when I moved into town was went to the Bolton, Bolton Day over at the Bolton Center School in May and bought one of those composters that Ron, and company were selling. And
yeah.
I've never had animals get into it, and it's been, 15, 16, I've got longer than that now. It's almost 20 years I've been here and never had any trouble with animals, no smells from it. You just have to do it right.
Maybe it's something to do with what you eat. Maybe those animals wouldn't like it.
We won't go there.
We might be getting off topic now.
But anyway.
So those items really highlight the increases in the Board of Selectmen's budget. And I will tell you that the Board of Selectmen wrestled over this a lot. Maybe Bob and Amanda want to weigh in, but none of us were excited to come here with an increase. We really wanted to try to keep this in the 1% to 2% range at most. And just unfortunately, there are things beyond our control that we weren't able to.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Bob Moore, just one comment, and that's, if you take, we had mandated the increase in elections, that's $71,000, and what we're anticipating an increase in the trash removal, that's $200,000 out of a total increase of $284,000. And that tells the story right there.
Yeah. And it's stuff we don't have any immediate and direct control over.
Right.
Just one quick thing, I don't know how much it affects your math because I don't know how you're averaging the numbers, but if you look at lines 28, 31, and 70, the percent change are not right. Because line 28, the percent change should be 0. Line 31.
The bottom line though, Ross, is across the bottom and the percentage is correct. It's not from.
It's not from up above?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I noticed that the transfer out was wrong also, but the bottom line is what's.
The bottom line is correct.
Okay, so as long as the FY24 and FY25 columns add up correctly, you
Right.
calculate the percentage off them, then you're fine. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Thank you. This received some last minute changes today, and
Yeah.
it needs a little bit more tweaking.
So, any other questions for Jim Rupert? I'm looking online and in the room and not seeing anything. So I would just entertain any discussion or thoughts now before we proceed. Bob Monroe.
I'll just say one thing, and I think you really hit the nail on the head, Jim and Bob, and that is education of our taxpayers and households to doing their own compost. There's got to be the answer to refuse stuff. We've been doing it for many, many years as well. And, use it for fertilizer, for your plants.
Goes in that goes.
Great.
My chickens eat well. That's what we do with most of ours.
Well, some of it, individuals who have land with a place that they can make compost and a place they can then use it on their property is one thing, but then we also have restaurants and other places that really can't compost on property, and we also have some small
lots, yeah.
Small lots where we have apartments too, so then there's a need to find some way to take that elsewhere and get it composted. So there's a number of different avenues.
So I did start with asking Rod Farley and our library to meet and discuss this and work on an educational program. And we actually have an individual available to us through All American Waste. It's one of the things that we actually put in our contract with them for public outreach. And I know that Rod took the time to actually meet with them. And, we're going to follow that up with, probably some future actions, which may start small with, just some additional information at the library when you walk in.
And, it's one of those things, it's a good economic incentive, but it's also just the right thing to do from, an environmental perspective.
So maybe we should consider giving those recycle bins out for free.
Yeah, I think when I bought mine 20 years ago, it was like $49, so I doubt they're going down.
How much would we save by not year after year?
Yeah.
Thought.
And I do know the library in the past has done some seminars or talks on composting. They've had a master composter come in and do some talks. So it all's good stuff. No, you can't solve it with one approach. There's a whole bunch of different ways.
Well, and that's only one aspect. And
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but the fact is, we do not have in the state of Connecticut a real comprehensive plan how to deal with our waste. And it's a helter-skelter, and unfortunately, the helter-skelter means you package it and you ship it somewhere else.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that Casella exists where it does, is because it goes on train cars and goes elsewhere.
Yeah,
And that's no solution.
it's just another transfer station effectively.
Really?
Right. And, well,
Yeah.
we could talk on for that one, but we won't.
Amanda's got her hand up.
Before we wrap up the budget conversation, based on my quick math, the combined change of both the budgets is a 3.34% increase overall.
Good, I was guessing in my head 3.35, so I wasn't too far off.
Obviously subject to change, but that's what we're looking at overall right now.
Amanda, is that, Bob Monroe, is that less the revision, obviously, from the rise sheet, and then also trying to take into account some estimate as far as the decrease in health insurance?
Oh, no, I didn't make any adjustments.
No, we're just going with these numbers.
I don't have the Board of Ed budget in the spreadsheet to make adjustments.
Right, now, health insurance, both the Board of Ed and the town are going through open enrollment right now.
Yeah.
So we don't have exact
That'll be good,
numbers.
that'll be
So
Correct.
we can't tell you that I think both budgets have already accounted for the actual increase for health insurance this year, right? And Kristen, you adjusted yours like we did ours, right?
No,
I thought we agreed we were budgeting at 6%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we reduced ours.
We didn't, because we were already done. By the time we got that number, our budget was done.
correct.
So, and again,
Revisit as you learn.
Yeah, that's a number you won't really have a good handle on until towards the end of
Right,
April, right?
Right.
to be honest with you, yeah, or maybe
Yeah.
potentially May, depending upon hires, because we didn't
Right,
necessarily
right,
budget family for all new hires,
Right.
you know?
Yeah,
Well, yours is gonna be way more volatile than ours anyway.
Yeah.
Correct.
We only have one person that's not on ours, so we have nowhere to go.
we don't have a lot to work.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah, we have a lot more volatility.
right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
And I think,
Oh, sorry. The other thing I think we should note is that our debt area of the budget actually saw
And again,
a
Amanda.
decrease
Yeah,
in,
slight decrease.
it is a total, so if you look at just debt and capital, that decrease is down 2.2% or $44,000. So that's between our bond payments and then capital improvements. So we actually were able to decrease that budget. Largely because our debt went down, but still good.
And this board was very good in that we guessed pretty close on
Right.
our on the
capital.
capital, but whatever you want to call it, budget.
Right. And then the only element that's not included yet would be our contingency fund piece.
Right.
yep.
Yep.
And then the other thing that I was speaking to Jill about today is I think we did get it's still not finalized, another copy of the grand list, so that will help us inform some of our next steps once we're
Right.
able to look at that. And I think that's something to start thinking about too for the next meeting is
Yep.
how does, what we've heard of, money givebacks from the school, and I don't know, does the town plan on returning any monies, board of selection?
Jill and I are gonna start working on that next week. We think yes, but I don't think it's gonna be significant.
No.
Okay, so again, we still have those to factor in. We need to look at the grand list, because then it's going to be another interesting thing where the grand list went up. But, how does that really affect what the people pay? Because the, rate, grand list goes up, mill rate goes down, but do you pay more out of your pocket or less, because mill rate really is just a tool to fill in the blank in the budget?
And, right, and the unfortunate thing is that the increases were not flat across the board. You can't say it was this percent,
No.
because it was, the percentage for various properties varied, so
Right,
it's,
so it's
for
hard.
someone trying to calculate based on last year and this year, it's not an easy, you think you had a problem explaining it last year.
Well, no, I mean, it's,
Thanks, Bob.
no, it was just like, when Rodney was asking about the per student, money for choice, students, that 6,000 average doesn't represent any one real person.
Right.
It's,
It's not linear.
Right.
No,
it's a reference number.
yeah,
And your results may vary, and it's the same thing as we're talking about with the, revaluation, because some people's property went up more than others, and, again, your results may vary, but we will be able to tell a sort of an average,
Yep.
but that's probably not going to apply. If it applies to one property in Bolton, I will be amazed if they actually have that exact, change. But, no, this is one of these things where it's, and again, Jill and I were talking about it, there's no easy soundbite to explain, all these different, pieces that go in. So that's something that we're gonna have to look at, and how do we help, people, the citizens understand that, who don't necessarily have all the background that we do from having to talk about this once a month, and they're just gonna see something on paper. So it's really important to, help them understand. Rhea?
I just have a question. So Jim, you mentioned something that the elections, which we had no control over, and the refuse services, which we really don't have that much control over for a couple of reasons. And the commodities part is a big one, as well as the amount of refuse. Yeah, that's like $210,000.
Yeah.
That was the point that Mr. Moore.
that's the point I was making, is that, other than that, you would have an increase of $84,000.
Yeah, 74.
And 70, right.
Yeah,
half a percent.
so that's really, I think that,
Less than 1%.
yeah.
And I think this
I
is
think
enough.
that has to be
That
explained.
tells a story.
That tells a story, and that's a story
Are you
that,
telling me I have a slide?
Well, both of them are, well, both of those situations you mentioned, Rhea, they're effectively created and managed by the state because the refuse policy statewide is a function of how our state government chooses to deal with recycling, chooses to deal with, all types of waste stream management. And then the same thing with the elections stuff. That's, another unfunded mandate from the state. And this is, on the Board of Selectmen side, but, Kristen Hecht also has similar mandates, from the state and federal government as well. It's,
and our school system is never fully funded as it should. That's their side of the issue.
So that's these are some issues that really have to be in the forefront of the public.
Agreed.
yes.
Sure.
I think, like when we discuss everything with the public and do our outreach. And Amanda, you'll have the slides, right?
And Ross, if I have time in among all the voting stuff. We'll see. We'll work on it.
I'm done.
We were thinking we might snag Ashley as well for the subcommittee. So I think we also kind of segued into discussion of public communication and outreach. So even though we didn't officially get to that part, I think that we did cover about all we can do tonight with it.
Do we have a little more data to figure out where we are?
So Jill?
I'm sorry?
No, you don't have to be sorry yet. I didn't say anything. You might afterwards. But
I am sorry, yep.
But anyway, with the grand list, right now, it's not finalized, correct?
Correct.
So do we have any time frame for when they think they might finalize it?
I don't have where I wrote down, where Kara said, it will be finalized shortly, but they still had their, BAA adjustments to do. I don't think they've had their hearings yet.
No, they haven't. They're not scheduled till at least mid-April.
I thought sometime in April, she said.
Yeah, since I'm on the list.
So that will be the time frame then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so again, it's like the usual stuff that we face is we have a certain set of information that's not going to be available until after certain key dates we have.
But that part of it is,
it's part of it.
It's pretty minor. I mean, the amount of adjustments that might come out of that.
Oh, specifically to the grand list.
Yeah,
So we could
It's
probably
minimal.
just
go with what you get, and I think you're so close, it's not gonna impact much.
Okay. Amanda?
So I think our plan for the communication subcommittee, which is myself, Ross, and hopefully Ashley, would be to come up with a template, right, presentation specifically for the public hearing. Understanding that the numbers are subject to change, but if you guys can get behind the outline and the content
That's the key,
broadly.
and then you throw the numbers in.
Right, then we will, up to last minute, the way we did last year, be adjusting the numbers as necessary. I will ask, Kristen, can you send me your presentation so that I can?
Absolutely, I'll send it to you right now.
Thank you.
You want the PowerPoint,
The PowerPoint.
not the PDF, so that you can actually cut and
Yeah, no, I'll
paste.
send you the PowerPoint right now.
Yeah, she'll send it.
Okay. Any other, since we did segue into the discussion of public communications, anything else to discuss on that topic? Because it sounds like we just covered as much as we can.
I think so.
And then we actually have to get down to doing a rough draft or something and bring it back for the committee to take a look at.
So I guess we're number 7, right?
And I guess we're at
I
number
have a request under the public communications part, and I've asked this again, and Jim might hate me, but can
Just
you see
Jim?
if the intern can work on an org chart for the town,
Sure.
please?
We have an intern?
I think, right? We still have an intern?
Yep.
And since he's working on the HR
Yeah,
manual.
he'll be with us
Oh, that would be
until,
good for an org
he'll
chart.
be with us through the month of April. So he should be able to get that done.
Well, so when you say this is specific to Board of Selectmen, or, okay.
I mean, just to include in our budget, like, because we're gonna have the presentation, right, but then the town is also gonna post the full budget
Yeah.
on the website.
So after your email yesterday, Amanda, and then Ross was last night or this morning, I checked with Kathy and Sue Ellen, and they were working on adding the stuff to the Board of Finance's page, but they had some changes that they were working on, because they had to convert it, which is why it didn't go up yesterday.
Okay.
But the other thing is, I told them to start the fiscal year budget page. And to, start posting stuff on that as well.
So that we'll have a,
Well, because not everybody's gonna wanna go to the Board of Ed's page and to the Board of Finance's page.
right, which is what we talked
and the
about,
Board of
it's all
Selectmen's
one-stop
page.
shopping,
Right.
and they can
So we
see it
wanna
as it
start posting stuff to
progresses.
that tab as well, so I told them to start putting stuff in that tab.
Okay, so that'll be ongoing, it won't just be the latest.
Yeah, but I think we're gonna have to, have open communications about what we want on
Yeah.
that tab.
Okay,
So that, because I don't know that we want absolutely everything posted there, because we don't want people to get lost in the weeds when they're looking for the
Correct.
information. Correct.
so it might just be good for some stuff, perhaps, like versions of this presentation that we're doing, which pulls it together, or we'll have to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do need what was shared with this board tonight, right, or whatever the final version is of those items. I think that level of detail is
Good.
necessary. I don't think the stuff that, like, all the detail that got shared with the Board of Selectmen should be what gets shared with the public. It's there and it's out for the public if they wanna look for it. But Lord knows they don't need
Oh, they don't need
300 pages worth.
No, they just need this, like, with a summary, with the introductory letter, because this tells the story, the bottom, here's what it was last year, here's what it's gonna be next year, and this is the difference.
Yeah, I gotta change the number on that letter too.
Yeah. All right. So we
Ross, can I
include-
ask, is there any plan to share widely with the community beyond the public hearing, some kind of document about the budget that we've talked about in the past?
Like a mailer?
You mean a mailer or flyer?
Yes, similar to, I know I harp on this every year, to like what Hebron and some other communities do, but I think we need to do it.
I think we had talked about it for potentially, like, so we created this communication subcommittee, not just for this budget season, but to be an ongoing group that would meet and try to, one, determine what should go in that budget document that gets posted on the website, what mailers should get sent. I think the challenge right now is we don't have a budget for a mailer, right? And I don't know that we have one built into next year's budget either. So that's something to potentially consider if that's.
Start with an electronic version? Or
We could start with an electronic version through the bulletin or something. Do I think we would be able to pull that together for this year? I don't know. I mean, I have the Hebron one, I was able to get it. But, yeah.
The electronic version hits huge percentage of your population.
Yeah, I mean, we could consider it. It would be a
I mean, the
big
other thing
lift.
too,
You have
for
the
people.
Bolton,
The
No,
bulletin.
no, the other thing you could do with that electronic version, you could also potentially just print it and have a few copies here in the town hall, or put them in a few other places,
Library,
senior center, library.
Yeah.
And then you're not
Senior center.
spending a lot of money.
Right.
Or, over in Herrick Park, Parks, rec, whatever, just a few places like that, and you're not spending a lot of money on postage, and it's
Yeah.
the same document.
Any of that sounds awesome.
Mr. Chairman, you can.
Yes, Rhea?
what proportion of the town is on the town site, or gets
I think we can
emailed?
tell you how many people are signed up, but I don't think we can tell you what percentage of the town
Oh, okay. Is it
receives it. So
a
we
lot
could,
of people?
we could, I don't know off the top of my head, I would have to ask Kathy as
Because
well.
I get a bulletin.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how many people get the bulletin, because we could
But
send
you
it out.
have to opt into that, right? We don't just have everybody's email address, you have to opt into it.
And what
That's
about
right,
the
we wanna do
school?
a
Would
push
it
for
be
that.
appropriate to
Yes.
send it through the parent, I forget what that's
Through the
called.
school system?
It's
Well,
called,
if
called
Once
parent-
Once the budget is set and the referendum date is set, budget in both, we can't send anything.
You send it out.
Right.
So we'd have to, would it be appropriate to do it as part of the community outreach prior to setting everything?
Well, good.
Well-
You can't do that
If-
because it's not in,
What you can send out is information. Information that can't be skewed one way or the other. You can't advocate in any way. Yeah.
no, just.
I can't send out, I can't even,
No, you can't do that, no, but I'm saying the town could,
It's a thin line to,
Yeah.
it's a fine line with it because what we think may not be pushing something somebody else could
They could screw
consider
ads, yeah.
oh, yeah.
easily. It's
I've been down
better
that
safe
road.
than sorry.
But through the town bulletin process.
We can't appear to advocate or not advocate for the
Well,
budget.
but you're not advocating just by
You could just say that
publicizing the budget.
the budget is available.
You can have a
to you at
statement
this
that
length.
the town clerk has to approve.
Well, if we sent out something that was simply a summary of the budget, so in a
Right.
condensed format along with, here's the rest of it, this is the first page that sort of lets you know what's going on, or
Yes.
first 2 pages, and doesn't pass any judgment, doesn't say what's gonna happen or not happen if you agree or disagree with it, it just is something, so they step into it, they get something, a little prettier than this, then they get this maybe, and then if you want, here is this whole thing.
Yeah.
And they'll probably stop at the first page, or the second, maybe.
So that's what I mean, that's pure information. It doesn't advocate one way or the other. You can't even imply advocating one way or the other.
Is telling people how much it costs for every election advocating one way or the other? Like the administration of every referendum, I mean?
Actually, we did that.
We
We did that the last time.
Yeah,
I think if you put out budget highlights, right, just like bulleted points,
right,
election cost X,
right,
as mandated by the state, that's just a statement of fact.
right, yeah. And garbage pickup, X because of increased cost of,
It's a fact.
That's a
It's
fact.
not like we're advocating for it or anything, we're just explaining, we
it's
didn't
an
really want to.
explanation of the increase.
Yeah, we
that's all
didn't
it is.
really want to do this, but this is just what
And
happens.
those,
So are you saying, Kristen, that the deadline is May 2nd based on the calendar?
Well, let's go.
That's the day that we adopt the budget?
Yes, once you guys adopt a budget on our side, I can't be, like, I have already sent out a communication to families about the board's budget, right? I mean, if you guys wanted to, put some bullet points together on a couple of pages, collaboratively or whatever, I could push that out now. But you also haven't made any decisions, it's just like, here are the 2 budgets kind of thing, So, yes, that is correct.
May 10th is the date that the finance committee has to have their budget adopted by.
Right.
Right,
But our last
whatever
meeting
date it is
before
you
that.
have actually adopted, I can't communicate after that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, after that, the only thing would be just like summary budget information, just to help make it more understandable. Any other comments, questions, observations, whatever? I'm not
Ross,
seeing.
can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry. On April 3rd, I just want to make everyone aware that Ashley, Rhea, and I may be late. We have an actual Board of Education meeting that night at 6:30, so we'll be running in as soon as we can. We're trying to make it a short meeting.
Yeah,
and with that, I will motion, we adjourn.
do I have a second?
Second.
Bob Morris made the motion and Ashley seconded. Amanda, I am sorry.
You're getting as bad as I am.
Okay, so the name begins with A.
It's after 9 o'clock.
It's after 9. And all those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Night.
Okay.